Alright, so just to introduce this video, I had an interview with George P. Hansen, the author of Trickster and the Paranormal. It was more of a conversation, an introduction to each other. Hopefully there'll be a part 2 or part 3, but I don't blame him if he's freaked out by me. The book I was talking about, I mentioned a book called Enchanted Boundary. The Enchanted Boundary is a book that he recommends. Anyways, and yeah, it's interesting. Overview of the book. Paranormal encompasses everything from levitating monks to EST, from spirits to cattle mutilations, and an incredible and unsavory hodgepodge. The mix seems incoherent, but the trickster makes sense of it. Maybe I'm the trickster. Maybe he's the trickster. Maybe we're all tricksters. Who knows? Maybe there's something going on here. We didn't get a really chance to get into the book that much. A little bit. He sneaked in a few things about the book. But I thought it was a fascinating conversation. I appreciated his time. I'm not quite sure how he feels about me. I know I'm a difficult person for a lot of people, so what can I do? You know. It's the Book of the Damned reminds me of Charles Fort, and it is a Fortean journey. And when you come to know these truths, you are damned, and there is no way of escaping. I guess you could try. You can, he recommend trying to do other things, but I really don't know. I plan on kind of taking a break from Bigfoot, kind of. What I'm more interested in is not just Bigfoot, but the interdimensional realm. You'll see a bunch of images throughout this video. A dozen or two, maybe something like that, of some of the images of the different entities, including Bigfoot, that I filmed, and other things, including, oh God, like what? Like a Wendigo, and just the things that look like, I don't know, gargoyles and stuff like that. And it's just, and other little small entities, and they're part of our realm. And I think it's, to me, what's interesting is not like to exploit these things or to take advantage of these things or to manipulate these things for my personal gain. But I think it's like the next part of our reality, of the realm that we live in, It's another realm to explore, so. And the diversity of these interdimensional realms, these parallel universes, whatever it is. Something's going in and out of those trees. And, it's not just Bigfoot, so. Anyways, this will be posted hopefully in today or tomorrow. And then this weekend, I'm going to interview Henry Franzoni, and he seems like a very interesting fellow. Bigfoot's a mystery to me a bit still. Now, hopefully he'll help me out in understanding, at least understand his take on Bigfoot. I don't think they're monsters. I don't think they're there to like torment us or anything like that. My issue in all these things is the realm that we live in and why there's such secrecy. Why have we been hidden? Why has this truth been hidden from us for so long? And I know he feels that it's a threat to the matrix, if you will, the irrational matrix or empire that's being built before us. But I have issues with it. So, I think that there's got to be a better way of living instead of just being wage slaves and being slave to the system. But I don't know. I hope he joins me again. I hope he liked me. And maybe he thinks I'm an absolute freak. Maybe I am an absolute freak. I don't know. Anyways, I do appreciate that he spent a couple hours with me. So if you do hear this, George, thank you. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your generosity. So with that, let's check out the conversation, I guess. It's more of a conversation.
So I read literary theory, I read a little bit of physics, not much of there, a lot of anthropology, some sociology, some psychology, but literary, I'm particularly interested right now in literary theory and communication. So it's a real mishmash, and most people in the academic world do not read outside their particular area of interest. And that's not going to work to understand the paranormal. So reading is really key, I think, to make progress, because there are a lot of insights that were published more than 100 years ago. The paranormal phenomena have been with us for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, if you go back to Sumeria and cuneiform writing, there's a really interesting book, The First Ghost. And it's about the cuneiform writing. In that writing on clay tablets, there is an enormous amount written about ghosts. So the concept and the idea of ghost has been around for a very, very long time. And our society pretty well neglects it. But the fact is, all cultures have had tales of ghosts and ghost experiences. That tells us something. We're not paying attention to this. We kind of suppress that. There's something very interesting about that. Why? Now, one of the primary province of ghosts and the like, and spiritual beings, is religion. Well, religion is sort of poo-pooed in many quarters today. And that's also very interesting. What things are marginalized? What things are sneered at, but have been around for thousands of years? That's a really interesting, you start there. Okay, why are they sneering at us? Why do they ridicule this? And if you start thinking about that, it may give you some more ideas about how to start thinking about things. The fact that, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I've been thinking about that quite a bit. I mean, I've been, somebody who's spent a lot of time, particularly studying the Bible in the past 10 years. And was, I don't know if first of all, I'm no longer, I've deconstructed, so I'm no longer the Christian. So I don't know, are you? So just to make sure I don't want to offend.
Well, I was raised a Catholic. I don't consider myself a Catholic, but I do often attend a spiritualist church. There are some very interesting messages I've gotten there. Some very, very striking.
I used to attend something called the Universe of. Oh God, what the hell? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but just reading theology and reading about ancient religions is very interesting, because they do address issues of the paranormal or supernatural, whichever you want to call it. Yes. And often today, it's discouraged. That kind of pursuing these phenomena are not acceptable in most Christian religions. The Catholic Church, in fact, has in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it says the Catholics are not to practice clairvoyance, for instance. But the Catholic saints do perform miracles and are involved very heavily with supernatural phenomena. So that's interesting in itself. It's sort of accept these phenomena, but don't practice them. That's rather in opposition to a scientific attitude where you want to explore. So there is sort of an inherent antagonism there in our culture. Now, one of the things that got me interested in the religious area is because the paranormal skeptics are very, very closely allied with atheists and agnostic groups.
True.
So that, and I wrote a fairly long article on CSICOP, that's the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of the Paranormal, which is now calls itself the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. And it's a very interesting group, and there are some very important and knowledgeable people, but they are also very allied with anti-religious organizations. So that's kind of itself rather interesting. Why is that? And if you look, one of the things I looked at in my book were statuses. There's what's called elite culture, people in the universities, lawyers, people that are highly educated, and their outlook on these phenomena is very, very different from people with lower status. And that's interesting itself. So the high status people tend to ignore this, sneer at it, and just keep a bit away, and they don't really talk about it. If you go to paranormal groups, you find very, very few lawyers there, for instance. Very few medical doctors are involved. There are some, but I attended a UFO group that met every month, and I was there I attended meetings pretty much through about 3 decades. And the lawyers that would show up were often those who were disbarred. And we almost never had medical doctors show up. We had, working class guys, a few people, college kids show up, and housewives, but the real high-powered business executives and whatnot didn't come by. So that itself is rather interesting to me, and it says something about the nature of the phenomenon. It's for the elite crowd, the academics, they can read, and you can get advanced degrees studying ghosts and monsters, but it's all fiction. They don't get out in the field.
Right.
You can literally get a PhD for writing about ghosts, as long as you take your data from fictional works. But to go out and actually study ghosts, no, you will be thrown out. You won't be accepted. People will laugh at you. And that itself is a very, very key fact that has to be understood if you're going to theorize about these phenomena and try to understand it. These are very, very major effects. And that's been the case for a very long time.
So now, does that really apply to all? So I can see how that would apply to somebody who's in academia or in the business world, or, where their job is on the line, their tenure's on the line, that kind of thing, the pressure of the group. But then there's the oligarchs and say like the monarchies, the people, the uber rich, that seem to have always
the uber rich, though, are likely to be a bit more receptive to this. There are 2 places where there are 2 sources of funding for paranormal research. One is from the U.S. Or the intelligence agencies, and the other is often from very, very well-to-do people. They're because when you're at the very top, you can do pretty much whatever you want.
True.
And people are not going to be sneering at you just because you are rich and powerful. And so 2 of the major people who have funded paranormal research is, one was James S. McDonnell, who had McDonnell Douglas Aircraft, that company, which is huge. And they did lots of secret government work. They also funded some work in UFOs. Another guy was, of course, Robert Bigelow and Brendan Fugel. who have supported the work at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yep.
So those people don't have to worry about their status. They already got it.
Right.
But if you get down a little, if you're just simply a CEO of a company, you might have some interest. But if you started the company and built it up, you got the company. You are the top guy. No one's really going to be able to tear you down.
Interesting.
Or sneer at you. They won't do that. But most people are.
I'm saying
most people are in. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, brother. And then there's the monarchies, like the Queen of
Yes.
England and that kind of stuff, who seem to have access to any, and especially those who maybe are the cream of the crop when it comes to the paranormal, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? If they're psychics or mediums or whatever, they seem to have at least they give the impression they have access to maybe more legit crowd members of the crowd. Is that true? Do you think?
Well, I do think people in royalty historically has had an interest and openness to the paranormal. But today, royalty has very little power. Most have some kind of, in Western culture, there's more of a, people are voted in, they can be voted out. The people at that level probably don't have too much interest in this, but royalty has a certain amount of leisure time. Unless they do something really bad, they probably don't have to worry about their income.
All right.
So King Charles, for instance, in England, is known to have had an interest in these phenomena. Not a huge interest, but some in alternative topics. And he's been kind of ridiculed for it in some of the academic.
Yes, he's a very influential person still in the West. I mean, when you look at the World Economic Forum, he's always showing up. And when it comes to everything that we've gone through in the past 4 years, he's had his hands in it.
Well, he has his hands in it. I don't think he really has much influence. You know, he has a high visibility position, but as far as actual power goes, not so much. A fair amount of wealth, I guess. He doesn't have to, but he does have a lot of responsibilities to carry out and go visit various places and peoples. But I would think within World Economic Forum, he probably has very little influence. He has high visibility, but probably not too much to say. And you know, he's busy with all sorts of responsibilities, so I don't really expect him to be, you know, someone who studies things very deeply. That's just not his role.
So he's more like a figurehead, I guess.
Yes.
So, anyways, so this the dynamics here and the well, how did you get involved with this? Why did you, of all people? I know that you talked. I've heard you talk about your father being in a dowser or something like that. And
oh yes.
But why would you get involved with this kind of stuff? I mean, it seems to me like one of those things. I mean, I wouldn't get involved with this unless the only reason I got involved with it because it got involved with me, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Or else I wouldn't even be interested in this stuff at all. You know what I mean? But the paranormal, these interdimensional beings, these whatever the hell they are, and they got involved in my life. You know what I mean? So why you? Why did you get involved in this?
Well, let's see. Well, when I got out of the university, I went to work as an engineer, and I was looking around for things to do in the evening, and there was this what was called a free university where you pay $1 and you take a course. You know, there were volunteer teachers and instructors, and I took the course on dowsing. I think it was like, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks or maybe 10 weeks or something. I don't remember. It involved a bit of meditation and mental focus and those sorts of things. And there were quite a few people in there. We'd go out for coffee afterwards and talk. And a fair number of people were very interested in psychic topics. And there were some who would do, and they were sort of trying out dowsing as a paranormal ability. So I think they were really interesting people. And about the same time, in the mid 70s, there was a big push by a skeptics group. It was started in 1976, I think, called Psychop. So it got a lot of publicity. Okay, this is all BS. But there were lots of TV shows on UFOs and on psychics back at that time. And I said, okay, well, this is, dowsing seemed to work. And there was one of the principals of the engineering firm I was at that we were out in the field, and he took a pair of welding rods and bent them and started to locate pipelines. So I said, okay, there's probably something to this. But then there were the skeptics who were so avidly just very hostile to any claims like this. So I started reading their literature, and they would talk about the research that was done. And so I would go to the library and read the skeptics material, and then read the material that they were criticizing. And often they got it completely wrong. So anyway, and my father was did a little bit of dowsing, and he had stories. He was in World War II, and he told of various premonitions that some of his buddies had, and were right on. He predicted, okay, which airplanes were not going to come back after a raid. So I was open to it, and my father he would point out, there'd be occasionally an article in a magazine about ESP, and he'd say, oh, this is interesting, and so I'd read that. And so I was just sort of open to it, just out of school, lots of things I could spend my time on, and this just caught my attention, because none of this was taught in engineering school or in my physics classes. So what is this? How come it hasn't been talked about before in our usual educational system? So, and it was a controversial and interesting topic just inherently. So I and I really liked reading the skeptics literature and then comparing to what they were criticizing in the evidence. Mm-hmm. And it became pretty clear to me that they were clearly wrong on many of their criticisms. And I went on and I published a number of articles and book reviews and whatnot, pointing out they're just blatant errors. So I realized, okay, there's something very weird here, but very intriguing. So that's how I got involved.
So I
was sort of nerdy, and
I gotta correct myself a little bit when I said that that I wasn't involved in choosing this. Which I will talk more about because it has something to do with the anti-structure part of my life. But I actually did go and try to disprove the existence of Bigfoot because I wanted to break what I was doing back 2017, and the intensive research I did that led me to end up having the encounters that I had. But anyways, did you ever figure out, does anybody know why dowsing works?
Well, in the course that I took, it was taught as a psychic ability. And we do not know how ESP works, or mind over matter. That's still a problem. There are a number of physicists who have made a stab at it, but none of the theories have been generally recognized as correct.
But it's still 2024. What are you talking about?
Well,
really?
The research actually in psychic phenomena, there was this what's called the Society for Psychical Research over in England. Mm-hmm. That was started in 1882, and some very eminent physicists were members of that organization and published on research that they did. And it was controversial then, but that organization called the SPR, Society for Psychical Research, still exists today. So the scientific controversy goes back, obviously, at least that far, and you can trace it back farther than that. that for as far as an organization with very top, in fact, 3 Nobel laureates were served as president of the SPR. So this controversy has been going on literally for 100 years and really more like 1,000 years. You can go back in the Greeks and see some of the debates even back then. I haven't done a lot on that, but I have read some of it. So these phenomena have been controversial for more than 1,000 years.
Now, would this kind of lead us into marginalization or this whole idea of marginalizing this? It seems to me
Yes.
that this, I mean, if it's been demonstrated over and over again, that this would be the one thing that a lot of industries and the science community would really want to understand. I don't see a logic.
Well, yeah, yes, you would think so, but they don't. They stay away from it. That suggests we're dealing with something very, very different than ordinary science, an ordinary way of living in the world. Now, these phenomena, even in very early cultures, were always recognized as having some danger to them. There were special rituals that one would undergo before trying to involve oneself with these phenomena, to conjure up spirits, to talk to the ghosts, and whatnot. These phenomena were clearly recognized, but they were not, in most cases, the province of the ordinary people. There would be specialists, diviners, shamans, dream interpreters, and the like, that had a special. And today you can see that somewhat in certain in Catholicism and in Greek Orthodox. There are people who go into monasteries and convents, and it's in monasteries and convents, if you look at the literature, there's some very, very striking and very large phenomena reported, like levitation of saints. So these phenomena have been recognized by religion, but the religious authorities generally, the people who get very involved with the mystical and the paranormal, are probably more likely to be in the monasteries and convents where most people won't see them. You read up on Padre Pio, for instance, who was sainted a couple decades ago, was known to levitate, and he would be seen in 2 different places at the same time. So religion has an enormous number of accounts of these kinds of phenomena. And if you go back into American Indian lore, well, there's plenty of lore about Bigfoot type creatures. And in some tribes, if one saw a Bigfoot, one had to be ritually purified. They recognized that there was something very different about these phenomena. Earlier cultures probably had a somewhat better understanding of these phenomena than we do today.
Right. And they understood that it was a spirit.
Yeah, something
like I'm
yeah.
I'm part Ojibwe, and that part of me, my ancestors, they talk about the Sasquatch, or they call Kitchisabe, and that it comes out of the trees. And you were talking about that bilocation. Is that what they're supposed to be, being in 2 places at once?
Yes.
But it seems to me, in the case of, then there could be, we're talking about the structure, the system, and religion's always been a big part of it. Catholicism has been a huge part of our lives, whether we're involved in it or not, and especially you look over the past, well, what we're saying, 1,000 plus years, that its involvement in their meddling hands and everything, that they would. Do you think they might have feel like a threat by these people, and that that had these special gifts, and therefore the system itself, Catholicism, popery, the bishops and etc., that they marginalized them because they felt threatened by it, because they didn't have those kind of gifts? And I mean, what would
No, okay, very good questions. Uh, but I suspect that people who had these gifts may have had a little more difficulty grappling with ordinary everyday reality. And if they may be more effective and more beneficial to the society as a whole within a cloistered environment.
is it like the First Nations people? I get the impression that that's what they did as well. Like this, so that the tribal situation and with the shamans and with the
Yes,
medicine one. So when they would have like a new initiate, they saw a gifted child, quote unquote, right? A gifted child.
yes,
They would take
yes,
that child and take them and remove them from the tribe and put them in the outskirts. Now, there's two
yes,
things that I think about. One thing is now the group itself, the tribe itself, and if it influences us, right? And it
yes.
really does distract us to be aware of the other realms, right? Because that's what we do. When we get together, two of us get together, start talking, and we stop paying attention to all the other things around us, right? Get a whole group of
Mm-hmm.
people, and it's almost impossible to stay aware of.
Yes.
So, like when I do my field research, I don't go out with anybody but myself because when I'm with somebody, I get too distracted. I'm focused on the person instead of what's around me. Does that make sense?
Yes. 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 Uh, haven't thought of it quite that way, but you're right. When my most creative in my thinking is when I'm alone, and then certain things just I find articles or I find books and give me some answers. If you're with, if you're in a structured group, if you're on a job or something, no, you've got to pay attention to everyone else around you. You got to kind of go with the flow with them. But if you're alone, I think you're a bit more likely to encounter something different and new, and your attention and focus will follow that. Whereas if you've got, like if you're in school, you've got to pay attention to the teacher if you want to learn it. So you're really
and the pretty
focused.
girl in front of you, you know what I mean? And it's
Yes,
hard to
that
focus.
too. Yes, yes, yes. So some of the most fabulous reports of these phenomena are from monks and nuns. And quite a number have been seen to levitate, and some have healing powers. And even after death, they may continue. In fact, to become a Catholic saint, you have to have, I think, a miracle or two very well testified after they've died. So this is very, very challenging to our science today. This is not how people think, most scientists think the world works. So they ignore it.
But George, I just, so like the ones at the top, the scientific community, the people that have really established themselves that no longer need to fear what the group says or the structure says, right? The matrix.
Oh,
I
okay.
just can't imagine them like saying not being interested in this stuff. I just can't see how like,
Okay.
you know,
If they're at the very top, they've spent much of their life and their career being conform. Their money comes from the bureaucratic structure. Now, if they've made a bunch of money on their own, they don't have to worry about it. But if they want to maintain their status within the group, so if they have powers, okay, they can control journal articles, they can they can be invited to TV programs and like Carl Sagan and be special. But if you're really out there and you're very creative, but you're in a little lower level, if you want to rise, you've got to keep your nose to the grindstone, and you cannot move into these areas at all because you will be ridiculed. And part of what my article on Psychop and the skeptics points out that they do use ridicule to discourage more prominent scientists from getting involved with this.
it's a lot of butt
It's
kissing.
really
A lot of butt kissing.
getting involved.
Awesome. So how do so a guy like you, who starts to think a little more independently and spends a lot more time on his own. How do you feel about the structure? I mean, for a guy like you, I mean, I understand that you feel like it's necessary to maintain society and culture, but for you personally, the individual, George, how do you feel about the structures? Because it seems to me
Well,
it'd be oppressive for a guy like you.
well, it is, but I like to piss people off. I think that's what the trickster does. If I can get by, it's more fun. Now, if I were married and had children, I wouldn't be doing this. Uh, I don't have that responsibility. So I am something. I don't have quite the constraints, and this may not have been a good choice for me, but I decided, okay, I really wanted to study this. But if I were to be loud about it, if I were in a big company, I wouldn't be talking about it because there would be religious discrimination as well as intellectual discrimination against me.
There's repercussions,
Uh,
isn't there? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I am a single man and I pretty much have decided I have a son who's 12 and a half, and this is all part of my messed up journey, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
and, but I guess I got to a point in my life I just said, screw it, I don't give a damn what anybody thinks. I've done everything right, and I still got screwed over anyway. So you know what I mean. So to me, it's like and I've decided to be pretty much uh, living like a hermit. I mean, I decided not to
Mm-hmm.
have more relationships after what his mom, what I had to deal with his mom, and still have to deal with her. I decided I wasn't going
Uh-huh.
to put my son through the chaos and all that, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think because I decided to pull away. Of course, plus I was forced to be pulled away because in
Uh-huh.
2009 I was damaged by this swine jibbity jab and ended up getting multiple sclerosis, right?
Whoa.
So that affects me in multiple ways. It's a disease I recommend no one ever getting. So
Okay, now, no, no. Tell me a little bit about how you got that.
I got it from well, what happened was from the job that I had was mandatory to take the swine flu jibbity jab,
Oh, uh-huh.
and I ended up in that batch. I was the lucky one, like playing like Russian roulette type of thing. And then when I got it, and ironically, the other person who got it was the boss's wife, who it was her business, who she was actually a doctor. She ended up getting it too. so,
Hmm.
so within a couple months of taking it, getting that, I I started to get blurry right eye. The midsection went numb, and then eventually my legs just stopped working. And my son's mother wheelchaired me into the hospital, did the spinal tap and all the other stuff. Said, "Oh yeah, you definitely got MS." So, but anyways,
Yeah.
but
Now,
it's a weird thing,
is
George.
it,
These tragedies, like it just goes back to this anti-structures type stuff, because
yes.
it will lead to what happened in 2017. And it will also have to do with the Bible and in religion, by the way, and my anti.
Yes.
um, and I hope you're willing to listen to me to my tale. But um, the thing is that was like the beginning of okay, that happened because like I was in the top of my game. I was 40 something, 41, good looking dude. I had doing my music, doing my art, had a good job, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? In the top of my game, and it all was taken away from me just like that. And
Okay.
then my son was born, and 2.5 years later, and then that really got me thinking, like, oh my gosh, I really don't know squat about anything.
O-
I really don't know
Okay.
anything.
Good. Okay. Okay. There's something very interesting you just said. You had MS.
Uh-huh.
That is thought to be an autoimmune disorder.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
It's a deterioration of the myelin
medium,
sheath.
no, mediums are much more likely to have autoimmune disorders than the normal population. Also, at the Skinwalker Ranch, have you seen the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon?
I have not. No. But I'll write that
Okay,
down.
it's
So
a
we'll look at it.
No, that's a very, very important book. This is the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Yeah, if you get a chance to see the TV show on the Skinwalker Ranch, if you go back, I think a lot of that's on YouTube. But the book, The Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, talks about the hitchhiker effect. Have you read anything about that?
I know about it, I experienced it.
Okay. The hitchhiker effect, some people from like the Washington, D.C. area would go out there, go back home, and people in their home, relatives, family members, developed autoimmune disorders. So there is something about autoimmune disorders that is linked to these phenomena. I've been thinking about that. I've got a number of ideas on that, and it fits into my own theorizing. But I think there's something there that trauma that you had,
Well, you know, so
manifesting
the
in disorders.
MS, you know, it's the deterioration of the myelin sheath, the webbing, my nervous
Uh-huh.
system. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It gets
Mm-hmm.
plaque on that, and I think that's the that for
Yeah.
it, what it definitely did was slow me down. Right? It slowed me down
Uh-huh.
completely. You know, from being a member of society as a whole or part of the structure. Right?
Yes. Yes.
It took me out of the game pretty much. I mean, as much
Mm-hmm.
as I tried to assimilate and try to make it work, it just wouldn't work. So then it forced me to
Uh-huh.
start thinking about other things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe deeper issues, like how the world really works. You know, I got into the
Yes.
Trickster
Yes.
movement. I started studying like the 9/11 and all the
Mm-hmm.
other things. Just started learning about, the press. That's like one book I read was The Lords of the Press. It was written, I think, in 1939, and it talks about how pretty much the oligarchs have controlled the press in the United States since its
Ah,
inception. Inception.
interesting. Uh-huh.
And that got me
Yes.
going. And then, and so I started questioning things. Once I realized uh, how dark this place is, then I got involved
Mm-hmm.
with, and I got in, I didn't join a church, but I became a follower of Jesus and one of these
Uh-huh.
hardcore Christian
Yes.
type guys. I didn't, I grew up a Mormon, so I didn't want to be part of.
Oh, uh-huh. Oh, that's interesting because I think Mormons have a real openness to this as well. Brian Fugel, who was funding the research at Skinwalker Ranch, is Mormon.
Yeah, I got a pretty wild, twisted past, but um, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that happen. But I left. The irony of that is I went on my mission. As a young man, because that was expected of you, right? And I went to
Yes.
North
Yes.
London, and that's where I met not my son's mother, but my ex-wife. I was married to her. She was half East Timorese and half Portuguese. I met her in front of the Abbey there in Bury St. Edmunds, and as a missionary, ended up baptizing her. Actually, ended up leaving the church and my mission. I had 2 months left of my mission, right?
Uh-huh.
And I ran off with her, right? And
Oh, wow.
she actually brought me into a world that I never would have known, because she like spoke 7 different languages, because she
Wow.
was born in East Timor. She was part of the East Timorese Action Network, the supposed first democracy, the millennia, the 21st century. And
Hmm.
of course, it was a disaster, as usual, what happens with the UN, and their people's lives are absolutely a mess. But regardless of that, because of her, while I was with her, I was being introduced to, I guess, the intellectual class, if you will, of my area, professors and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, people that have either worked for the UN or etc.,
Uh-huh.
politicians and all that kind of stuff. So, and end up becoming friends with some. So it was interesting. I realized I was not them.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
which is not a bad thing. But so yeah, and so I end up becoming very much materialistic, worldly, and didn't want anything to do with God. Didn't want it, and did not believe in anything kind of spiritual. It's only
Mm-hmm.
past, about 2011, 2012, actually, with a lot of things that happened because my son's mother, she broke up with me on my birthday a month before the disability check, and because of the MS, right? And I
Uh-huh.
don't blame her. I don't know who wants to. I don't want to live with MS, so I can't blame her. I want to be with somebody with MS, but she has a lot of issues, anyways. And then my father died the next month. I was holding my son in my arms in his house,
Whoa. Wow.
um, and so there's a lot of as you call it, anti-structure, this the chaos that
Mm-hmm.
came to my
Yes,
life,
yes,
right? Which
yes,
then led
yes.
me into this quote unquote spiritual side of things. Um and I tried like the spiritualist thing beforehand. It's called the Unity Church, and you probably
Okay,
know something.
yeah.
I was involved with that, and I discovered even back then that like things like The Secret and the power of intention and visualization.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
You can manifest things, but I got burnt from it too. And that's one of the things that people don't talk about, George, is the dark side of all this stuff. And if you
That's
don't,
absolutely true. Yes.
yeah.
They do avoid that. Yes.
So I just want to talk about love and all the positive things, and just like because that stuff it made really. I mean, they brought my high school sweetheart into my life after not seeing her for 16 years.
Ah.
That's a long story in its own right, and it was total
Uh-huh.
chaos that ended up happening. But so then I walked away for a while, but then after the tragedies that happened, with my son's mother leaving me,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much raising my son by myself the first 4 years, trying
Uh-huh.
to do
Wow.
that, going to this chaos. So I really got
Mm-hmm.
into this Jesus thing, and I really studied the Bible. So this is what happened in
Yes.
2017. And I'm sorry we're bouncing around like this. And for those who will hear this, I hope you realize that me and George are learning to know each other right now before we get into
Yes.
details. Uh, is that in 2017, as I was reading the Bible and I just really studying and really believing it, and then over and over again in New Testament, it talks about the immediacy of the message. And that Jesus said that he was coming back in his generation. All the apostles,
Mm-hmm.
Paul expected him to turn in his generation. So he's returning his generation. I try to talk to people in the Christian community and talk about being ostracized and demonized, and no one ever want to talk about what it was saying, right? They label you and put in this thing called the preterist camp, we just for
Hmm.
preterism, right? But and so I became so discouraged with all the things I was learning, and then realized to see the I don't know, you probably have a better way of saying it, but the social pressure, the dishonesty, the
Uh-huh.
refusal to look at things. And I think there's association with what we're also talking about as we go along with this,
Yes.
for the
Yes.
paranormal.
Yes.
It's like,
That, yes.
listen, this is what it actually says. Why won't you guys look at it and talk about it? And I think the reason
Mm-hmm.
is because it will threaten their worldview and a lot of people, their faith is in this world's going to end, right? And they can't wait for this world to end and be saved. You know what I mean? That's going to fix everything. And when they realize the world's not going to end,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that your Bible is not the infallible word of God and all the kind of stuff, they become really threatened by it. And so I was really discouraged. And then I decided, well, to screw this, because I guess a part of the Christian truther movement side of things on the internet, right? And I said, it's like everything's screwed up. I just F it. I'm going to go. What's the one thing that I could go pursue that everyone thinks is forbidden, right? Faux pas.
Uh-huh.
And for me, it was Bigfoot. Now, somebody else might be paranormal, or it might be ufology or whatever, or uh, But for me, it was Bigfoot, right? I thought it was just a big joke,
Uh-huh.
right? Just a government psyop, big joke, and I could prove it real fast that it wasn't real. Well, because of how I do things and how I developed, my skills of researching, within 6 months, I'm standing next to a Crow Indian medicine man while two Bigfoot show up and pop up. One
Whoa.
gets 15 feet in front of our grills.
Oh, this is fabulous.
Yeah.
This is
Uh,
very, very interesting.
which, by the way, then you talked about the hitchhiker effect. Well, that whatever was with it came home to me. And then
Oh.
6 months later, I had a 3 day, the most bizarre, most traumatizing experience of my life where another Bigfoot manifested in my backyard. And I'm not kidding when I say manifest.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find
Mm-hmm.
out that this is very quite common. But it's another thing about the Bigfoot community is you're not allowed to talk about this. You can't talk about
Yes, yes.
supernatural, the
Right.
paranormal side of things. You have two choices. You're going to be on the woo camp or you're going to be on the flesh and blood camp. But you can't
Mm-hmm.
talk about this unless you take a side, and then you got to stay in that cult, that mentality,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I
Yes,
didn't want to
yes.
join a group. I wanted to know what the hell was going on with my life. I wanted to know what the hell just happened. I went out to try to disprove Bigfoot, and I find out that Bigfoot is nothing that all TV programs are saying, and all the quote unquote experts they have a voice in that community are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm talking to these old hats, these people who have been experiencing that in private will actually talk about the supernatural side or the paranormal side of Bigfoot, but in public, mm-mm.
Right. Yes, yes. That it comes with this territory. That's more the rule than the exception.
So then this comes to this, so the questions I have, I don't know, it seems there's so many places to go with this, and I'm so happy that you joined me, and I hope this is not the first and last time, because in some ways, I mean, you are involved in parapsychology, right?
Well, I don't use that term anymore. The field of parapsychology as such, when I was active in the 1980s, there were 6 laboratories in the US doing research. And there may be about 30 people on average. Today, there's maybe 1 or 2 people doing significant research in the U.S. It's there's there were there's maybe one lab sort of doing some research, but it's not like it was 40 years ago.
Which is now go
That
back
was
to this whole thing about how this world, the way it's designed, this place that we live in, it makes no sense. Once again, why not?
yeah,
We mean, there's
yes,
not only
yes,
the degree of people that are interested in this stuff
yes.
and have been affected by this stuff. You would think that even if it is a niche market, I mean, I was looking at how much you can make in the quote unquote being a parapsychologist. Is like you might as well work at a gas station.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes, yes.
What's going
Uh,
on? Why is this,
no,
George? It
no.
makes no sense
Yeah,
unless there's something set up against us.
yeah. This is what you're coming really close to the really important questions. Why isn't it? And this can lead to all sorts of other areas. People are afraid to address that. I think my book did a little more effectively than most. But yes, this is a question of why. But this has been the case for a very, very long time. As there are certain people in American Indian culture that deal with this sort of as their main thing to do. But they're very few. But in our culture, well, you've got psychotherapists, but they don't really talk about most of these phenomena very openly.
They don't even know it.
Uh,
They might,
yeah,
they don't know it. They might know of it, but
they,
they don't know it.
exactly, exactly, exactly. So this is very, very different. Now, today, with the political turmoil and the extreme interest in UFOs and in transgender, you see a more openness. Now, transgender people are much more likely to be involved with the paranormal than ordinary folks. In
This is
fact,
true.
I've attended transgender conferences. There was a huge one that ran for about 20 some years over in Philadelphia, and I lectured there at one of the years. And but there were a number of they might have like 50 different sessions going on at the same time, but you could have had a full day conference on on the paranormal from those people. There were uh, every year they had people talking about phenomena and admitting uh, and practitioners of paranormal skills, and so it's so you find it in the margins. You find it among the transgender. The American Indians we refer to the two-spirit people, who would have both male and female aspects, and it was those people who would be called upon to become shamans. So, and that's a very liminal. It's blurring male and female. So you see an openness there. So we're seeing today this transgender issue in political and social controversies. You also see the UFO phenomena emerging in a very big way in the media. I think these are related and related to the UFO topic. As you talk to Stan Gordon, you know that Bigfoot Bigfoot sightings are associated with UFO sightings.
And
This now
and
this makes no
paranormal, and I
sense.
can tell you, I reassure you, he calls them interdimensional. It's
Yeah,
interdimensional,
that's fine. Mm-hmm.
but you might as well.
Whatever word you,
Yeah, it's a
yeah, could
ghost. You
you,
want to call them poltergeist, you want to call them paranormal, whatever. That's whatever it is. That becomes even more prevalent when it comes to all of it. If you
yes, yes. So you need to have a different perspective on how that is working. So if you look at what's around the ghost phenomena, the UFO phenomena, the Bigfoot phenomena, well, you got the people who are really into it are kind of weird like us. Uh,
yeah, but we
so
but why were we chosen to be weird? You know, it's almost like, I mean, I didn't want to be weird. I just wanted to be like this normal
you know,
dude that had a pretty woman and made love to her and a couple times a week,
yeah.
and you know,
Well, for
had a decent job and a nice home. I mean, I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this.
for whatever reason, that's where we are. Uh, and it's an interesting way to live a life. Uh, but it's been going on for a very long time. And I think it's very fundamental to understanding the nature of reality. People don't want to probe that too deeply, but these phenomena have been around for thousands of years. There have been shamans, medicine men, healers, psychics, diviners for a very long time. And that's partly what my book is about. The book on Max Weber, Charisma and the Disenchantment of the World, goes into that from a sociological perspective. Max Weber was one of the most eminent founders of the field of sociology. And today, in fact, he wrote a book, The Sociology of Religion. And on page 2 of Sociology of Religion, he talks about telepathy and how that's related to charisma. But if you look at the academic literature, I've got probably 5 or 6 books explicitly on the topic of charisma. And I've checked Google Books and the indexes, none of those talk about what Max Weber said about charisma and telepathy. They don't mention telepathy.
Didn't you also
So,
say? I remember you saying in that interview with and Paratopia that the intent was to just to the elimination of magic in the world, right? With what
yes,
his
yes.
book. I mean, why? Or is it
Well,
was it really elimination for us, the pleb or the slave class, if you will, or the lower class? It's
uh-huh.
and just allowing it to be in the hands of the social engineers, the technocrats of our
Well,
day.
the technocrats can't handle this. No, it's the people. the lower classes that understand this in a much better way and much more a fuller way. The technocrats, no, don't get this at all.
Or maybe
So
maybe they're
that's what.
trying to replace it with like technology. You know what I'm saying? They're
Well,
trying.
yes, yes, they are. They are in some ways. In fact, there's some very interesting ideas about technology and magic. That's a bit beyond what we can talk about tonight. But the antagonism to these phenomena within the bureaucratic organizations is very subtle, but it's there. So these phenomena are not explored. One of the people I quote is, let's see, I can't quite, I don't want to articulate this right now, but we'll talk about it. I'll
Okay.
put together some words. Because sometimes trying to express these ideas in words is rather difficult. In my lectures, I usually have diagrams rather than words, and sometimes that helps clarify some of the concepts. So
Now,
at
there was
some
a
point
book
we might.
that you recommended too with those guys in the one interview, something the enchantment or whatever. It was a book that was written hundreds, hundreds, about 100 years ago. And it was challenging the critics. What was the name? Something enchantment.
Oh, let's see.
I
Yes.
started listening to, but I can't get to it because Zoom is in the way, and if I move it, it's going to knock the call.
Okay.
But it's fascinating with the approach of actually going after the critics, which is a fascinating thing that there's like a whole subculture of cults that are not only critics against like paranormal, but also UFOlogy. And then there's like a whole, because all of it, it's this madness that goes along with this stuff. Like when Bigfoot, there's like all these hoaxers, right? There's tons of people hoaxing stuff, right? And saying
yes,
like some of this pareidolia and say it's a Bigfoot, and or there's such madness and also, and so, but then there's a whole group, because all they have in the physical group, the flesh and blood group, is footprints. That's all we got. We got this Patterson film that was filmed 60 some years ago. We have a few seconds of the Patterson film, and that's all we really got. All the other stuff that we've had so far, even the videos I have, it's a much more etheric and more like you can see it, you'll see the face and stuff like that, but it's nothing like, it's more like a ghost. It's more like a spirit, right? It's more. It's not.
Yes.
Whereas Patty's things is one thing that's like, and actually, there's the guy I'm going to be interviewing Saturday. He was part of a group of guys that actually was financed and managed to raise $5 million and managed to get professionals and to go over the video. And this would be fascinating to see what he has to say. But if they did this report, right? And like it just went nowhere. It's like, and everyone in the community of Bigfoot world, that I call it Bigfootery, right? The cult of, I call it the church of Bigfoot. I call it the Church of Bigfoot. Is what it is. It's like a giant cult, is what it is. And what it is, it's like everyone forgot about what these guys did. No one pays attention to what they did. They actually spent $500,000 of that $5 million specifically on that video. They got, that's a whole, it's quite fascinating, the whole story. And then they published it, and it just deaf ears. Everyone, the Bigfoot community ignored it, scientific community ignored it, the government ignored it, everybody ignored it. And they've acted ever since. And there's been all these other groups that have showed up since, pretending like they're the first ones to ever do this, right? Or really put time into it. And it's just like the sheer madness. This is this trickster spirit or spirits. I mean, I'm going to go straight to the punchline here. I think, and if it's for whatever it's worth, George, it seems to me that we live in something like a reincarnation soul trap matrix in which these entities play a role in pretty much messing with us.
I presume you've read some of John Keel.
I love John
Are
Keel, of
you
course. Yes.
okay? Yes, yes. Yeah, you're sounding a bit like him. Yeah, you can conceptualize it that way. But also, it's part of us and part of our own psyches that feed into it. And to conceptualize it, this is very difficult to think about in our normal ways of thinking about this, in how we're taught in school. Uh,
I've lost the
so
normal part, so you go ahead, let's talk it.
again, I can, yeah, it's easier to talk one-on-one, or if I have a chalkboard or someplace I can do some diagrams.
Well,
As to what's going.
if you do you have a computer?
I do.
Well, then you should be able
Uh,
to you,
yeah,
you don't have a
y-
mic to your computer, right? So you say you don't, right? You don't have a, you do have to have
yeah,
a mic. So
yes.
if you're hook up,
Yeah,
get yourself. Uh,
yeah,
did you
yeah,
get a
I've
mic?
done that before. Uh, but yeah, and you have to start thinking more about what happens around the phenomena. What are people like when they're around it? That's the key data. It's not the setting of the Bigfoot itself. Okay, what
Oh,
happens to these people? What are they like? And you will start seeing some patterns there. What happens in their lives if they have a really close encounter?
well, I can tell you, my life went to shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that you look at the
And I'm not
Mothman
alone.
prophecies.
You know,
Yeah.
we try to pretend it didn't happen, but let's be honest. I mean, we've come. I mean, I lost my best friend. I mean, my
Uh-huh.
son's mother tried to took me to court over it, tried to take my son away.
Mm-hmm.
On and on it
Yeah.
goes. You know what I mean? It's not like it's like a curse, but there's a reason.
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
reason why they're the system, the matrix, the interdimensional realm, if you will, is making this happen. I mean, why? It's almost like they feel it's like they're threatened by us finding out this stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes. 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 I think John Keel would agree with you.
Well, I'm asking you, not
Yeah.
John Keel.
Yeah.
John Keel's not
They're,
here.
okay. Uh, but yes, it can certainly be interpreted that way. No question. And, I am not a counselor and I don't quite think in terms of how do we avoid this, but,
I don't think we can
yeah,
avoid it. The best thing is just
no,
how
we
do we
can't.
how do we navigate it? How do we
Yes. Yes.
cope with it? How do we
Eh,
rationalize or justify it?
Yeah. Those are good questions. I think religion and ritual have been used in years past. We've largely forgotten. That's why we have had ritual, and people kind of sneer and laugh at ritual. But that's probably a very important part of our heritage, and people have forgotten about that. If you look at the Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox churches, and say the Orthodox Jews, they're more into ritual than the more liberal
But
denomination.
the thing I noticed, George, is that like so I went to the Christian community about this, right? The only people that were willing to even entertain what I was going through in 2017 were the Pentecostals. The,
Yes.
and you
Oh,
know what
yes.
I
The
mean?
You look at historically, they had a lot of phenomena. You go back read the history of Pentecostalism. Yes.
But they didn't know
Uh,
what they were talking about. And they actually caused me
no.
more problems than good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think a number of people would say that. Uh, so, yes, it has to be accompanied by some intellectual analysis too. I think Catholicism in years past may have been a little bit more aware of it, but that can get distorted too. Uh,
Well,
I wouldn't.
the priests in Catholicism are like more secular than the
Yeah,
average person.
that's
I
right.
mean, they don't,
Yes,
there's a
yeah,
couple that
yeah,
believe in the spiritual warfare, but even those that do believe in the spiritual warfare, their understanding is a little messed up,
yeah,
from what I can see.
yeah, yeah. I, I, j- I haven't looked at that very much, but I certainly that would be consistent with what I've observed generally. That the view of our culture has been to disparage and to ignore uh, spiritual aspects, spiritual, whether it be Bigfoot or ghosts or angels or whatever. Uh, the good intellects kind of flee from that, and that's a mistake. You do see in some of the fundamentalist and evangelical Christian groups an understanding that these are realities, but the way that they deal with them, I don't think is terribly successful.
No, I mean,
We.
I know for me, with my second major encounter, as I told you about the 3 days of hell,
Mm-hmm.
listening to the one group of people was willing to entertain me. There was no shamans to help me out. There was a medicine woman, but she
Right.
caused more
Yes.
problems than good. And then there was the Pentecostals, and by me rebuking this thing that manifested looked like a Bigfoot, I believe me doing that agitated whatever that poltergeist thing or whatever that entity was, and the things with
Mm-hmm.
it, and they decided to teach me a lesson,
Yeah.
and for
Well,
3 days.
sometimes in some traditions, I think you make offerings to these people, okay, or these entities, leave out some food or something like that, and okay, here you can have this, and uh,
Well,
I
I
don't.
I decided to rebuke him.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best way to do it or not. Maybe in some cases, but yeah, we
It
don't
didn't
really
work.
understand this.
Me
Yeah,
calling upon the name of Jesus and the blood of Jesus and all that, and some people can be
yeah,
offended by, but my story is my
yeah,
story.
yeah.
It didn't work. In fact, things didn't end, and I think the way the spirits played it out, it didn't end for 3 days. And after being completely exhausted, listening to all these different people, I was even Dr. Erica Shepherd was involved, a famous she's famous for her delivery ministry and the alternate
Hmm.
media and that kind of stuff. She's the guided
Uh-huh.
in all this stuff. And it wasn't until 3 in the morning, by the way, and on a Wednesday, and I got sick and tired of it. I was sleeping with my son in his bed, right? And I was the reason I sleep with him was I was worried about my son because he was affected by this stuff too.
Oh, oh,
And,
uh-huh.
and there was weird stuff happening in the house, and
Hmm.
something was walking on our front porch, right? And when and it woke me up. And
Uh-huh.
eventually I was so exhausted, so frustrated that I got up and I started screaming at it and F-bombing it and calling it everything on their son. And the funniest thing is it freaked out itself. And I think it was so used. I think it was having fun of me calling on the name of Jesus and the blood and others and acting like, I think it was just having fun with me, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but then
Mm-hmm.
it freaked out because I somehow exerted my own energy, my own
Uh-huh.
authority.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so then it took off. And my buddy, because I live in a quadplex, who he just came back from work. He works at the Air Force Base. He just retired from the Air Force Reserves. He pulls in, and I find out next day. He tells me that he asked me how I was doing. I said it was the worst 3 days of my life. And I started explaining to him, and I asked him, did you see anything? Have you seen anything strange the past couple of days around our place? He said, yeah, last morning when I showed up after work about 3:20, between 3:20 3:30 in the morning, there's this really tall dude who's like all dressed in black, like a black hoodie, one of the biggest dudes I've ever seen in my life, walking in our yard, walking north, walking it way from our property. And well, it's not our property, our landlord's property, whatever. And he said for him, he got in his pickup truck and went to go chase this person down because he's like, "What the hell is somebody doing in our yard at 3:30 in the morning?"
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
He just thought it was a really big dude in black. He didn't
Yeah.
register that it was some kind of apparition or a Bigfoot or something like that, but it seemed like something real to him. And when he went to go chase it, it just like vanished. So, anyways,
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
it's very interesting because all my these experiences, a lot of them I shared it with other people. And my point in bringing this all up is the fact that I didn't. There was no help. Nobody
Uh-huh.
knew.
Uh-huh.
There nobody, and even my buddy who after seeing it in real close quarters. I mean, it couldn't have been more for him. It could have been more than 30, 40 feet away from where he was when he pulled
Mm-hmm.
in. Insisted it was a really, really tall dude in a black hoodie, all dressed in black.
Uh-huh.
Really big
Uh-huh.
guy. But no ways could it be a Bigfoot or something else like that. You know what I mean? And I just find this whole shit show.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's and I don't want to sound like I'm being negative, but I guess I am.
No, no, no. Uh,
Because but
no,
it
but
is a shit show. It is a shit show.
yeah, 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 yes, yes, it often is.
You
Now,
know,
exactly where are you located?
in Northwest Ohio on the border of Michigan, just on the edge of suburbia and where farm country starts. Farm.
Okay, how far from Toledo?
I am Sylvania, so that's just basically suburbs of Toledo.
Okay, okay, so what? So you're in Pennsylvania?
No,
You
I'm in.
said?
I'm. The
Oh,
town is
oh,
called Sylvania. Take the pen
oh,
off.
oh,
Take the
oh,
pen off. It's Sylvania. It's a suburb of Toledo.
oh.
In a
Okay.
place
Oh, so
in a place you're not supposed to be seeing Bigfoot.
okay, Toledo. Okay, I've been in Toledo a few times. I went to.
Sorry for your
I lived.
misfortune. I'm sorry for you.
I lived in Ann Arbor for about 6 months, and I went down there once or twice to some bookshop or something, as I recall.
Mine,
Um,
for is that for schooling or for
no, I was working in Ann Arbor as an engineer, and
okay.
weekends I would drive around and get familiar with that area.
Ann Arbor's a
Uh,
nice place. Toledo
yeah.
is Toledo's Toledo. Hey, there's a reason why John Denver wrote a song called "I Spent a Week One Day in Toledo." So
uh, okay. Yeah, I don't know anyone in that area offhand. Now, there are sometimes ghost groups. I know ghost research groups. I know there's one in the New Jersey area that I don't know. I've only met the people briefly, but it's been around for more than half a century. Uh, so I don't know have you gone online and found other people in your area that might have some interest in these?
um, you know, um, I have a very unique story. A
Okay.
story that's not supposed to have happened. And the people in the paranormal community, they don't believe me. Most of the people in the Bigfoot community don't believe me.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
and and,
Mm-hmm.
and I've also seen UFOs. Probably this is one of the reasons why I started listening to Paratopia because in February of last
Yeah.
year, which will be part of our conversation down the road of my UFO experience,
Uh-huh.
the third one.
Uh-huh.
Because the first time
Mm-hmm.
I had encounter with the Bigfoot, I already had a sighting, then the encounter, and then the next week I actually had my first UFO,
Ah, uh-huh.
and then paranormal stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Mm-hmm.
this is none of this is I'm trying to deal with it, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
problem is, what is going on. Half the people aren't going to believe you in the first place. Even the people in
Right.
the
Right.
community, right? They're just not going to
Yes.
believe
Yes.
it. It doesn't
Yes.
matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the rest of the 50 are going to tear apart your story and find the faults that they see
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
left on your own
Okay.
anyways.
Yeah. 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 That's often the case. I grant you that.
And so
Uh,
so it's like, and we haven't really got through even really of my questions, but it's okay if you're willing to do another, at least another show or two. I hope, because
Okay.
I think this for me it's gonna be very cathartic. But I think any of those people that hear this conversation, I think that they need to hear this conversation. They need to hear about
Well, yeah.
what you have to share, and a different perspective, and like the trickster
Hmm.
spirit. And I mean, uh, we didn't really get into it. It's just, which is, I guess, an introduction to each other, right? You know a little bit
Yes.
about
Yes.
me, and
Right.
what I know about you is from the shows that I've seen, interviews that you've been on, and
Hmm.
um, and then of course your website and a little bit about you, and but you there's, you know, like the trickster spirit. Let's just, before we end this, let's just do question one if we can. I have this list, which I will have this posted on the video as well, so people know about my little list. But the first question I asked George, because he asked me for a list of questions, is what or who are these tricksters? Now that's a big question.
Okay.
I understand it
Yeah.
covers, but maybe we can
Yeah.
start with that. Where can we go with this? Because there's the
Okay.
folklore, there's
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to address this problem. Um, and I think it may be sort of the wrong question.
of
Now,
course.
what you need to, for me, in the way I think about it, I need to kind of step back and look at a variety of paranormal phenomena, whether it be poltergeist, be it Bigfoot, be it UFOs, uh, or shamans. What are the common characteristics? Well, one of the common characteristics is that the phenomena are somewhat disruptive. If you, in as I mentioned before, if you see a Bigfoot in certain American Indian cultures, you need to be purified. So there's some danger there. You need to be careful around these phenomena. Uh, they are marginalized. So you need to start thinking more broad. Okay, you've got Bigfoot, you've got UFOs, you've got poltergeist phenomena. These are things people don't usually talk about.
No, they don't.
And that's an
And it
important
shouldn't have
fact.
happened. It shouldn't have happened to me. That's what I feel like.
Yes, but
But it
it
did.
still happens.
I,
But it still happens.
right.
So there is certain kind of danger about this. You cannot pin it down. So you have to think more broadly. And this is a very difficult and more abstractly. So these phenomena occur. What are the properties of these phenomena? If you try to identify a spirit, well, yes, but to me, I don't, it doesn't take me very far. When you start thinking about, okay, you want to get back onto a much more regular track, you go to your job, if it's 8 to 5 or whatever, and do that, focus on that. Focus on something that's
So
more repetitive.
what I did, um, I read the Bible is what I did. I didn't know what else
Okay,
to do. So I was, still,
well,
I was a
the
hardcore
Bible,
Christian. So I read the Bible all the way through, literally out loud. And I actually
yes, but
recorded twice
okay,
online, and you reading it.
but okay, the Bible though kind of brings you into these phenomena as well. But if you were doing something like auto mechanics or carpentry or all sorts of different occupations, if you focused on that, it kind of puts you more in the mundane world. If you get too involved with the religion aspect, well, that kind of stirs it up and you're still trying to deal with it that way. That can be useful, but I think some more
Yeah,
regular type
it
repetitive.
caused some problems, I have to admit, but it also helped me to realize um that I was in a cult that I need to get out of it. So, and then some,
Yes,
for
yes,
me, you know
yes.
what I mean? Because it was I
Hmm.
for me, studying the Bible, studying I actually caused me to deconstruct because I started to find all these contradictions and all this kind of stuff, and
Yes, yes,
then
yes,
I had to
yes.
deal with that, and swallow a crow with people
Right.
online and say, you know what, I know I for a long time I was just hardcore Christian, but
Mm-hmm.
I just can't pretend anymore. I can't make
Yes, 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 yeah. Uh,
so
so
when I
doing
had
something.
so the May 15th, I actually filmed the last time I actually went out, and I filmed what they
Uh-huh.
call Bigfoot, right? And I got a video on my YouTube channel, and you can look at it. It's just there's definitely something there. You can see it. It's dark black and it sticks out like it's middle of the day. Um, um, and then after that, I just like totally let go of the like a couple weeks later, I just was like I basically just did a ritual. I took the
Uh-huh.
Bible. I know it sounds extreme, but I took the Bible, I burnt it, I mixed it with tobacco, and did an offering around my what I call it, my one of my sacred trees, a large silver maple, and said, "I'm done with this stuff. This stuff is black magic in my book. I don't want this anymore." And then I for the summer I picked up my acoustic guitar, and that's all I did for the whole summer, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I haven't. I filmed a few things at night in the fall, as far as orbs and there's ectoplasm and that got Optimus, the
Okay.
ectopus,
Uh-huh.
and I have some,
Ectoplasm?
yeah, in my neighborhood,
Uh-huh.
in my backyard. And today I started is the first time I did again. I went to check out some of the areas, and this another phenomena that we're trying to talk about is everywhere where I film, everywhere they film stuff, or I had encounter, trees start dying.
Hmm.
And the first encounter that I had when that Bigfoot got 15 feet in front of me, I was standing next to Crow Indian Medicine Man, I started pissing
Uh-huh.
blood that night. So I started pissing
Wow.
blood that night, and it was like that for a week. So there's something else going on here too, as far as
Well, maybe it's
energy.
telling you you shouldn't pursue it.
I think so, but here's the thing. It's like, well, you're in the UFOlogy, you're in this paranormal. How's come you're still in it? Why are you still
Well,
interested? I mean,
okay, I'm more distant. I do not try to contact these entities. I do not, right. It's been a long time since I've been out on any regular type of investigation. If I'm
do
doing
you,
it,
do you feel that's like a form of contact? Do you like just because I'm not like talking to him, I'm not like doing, like, and I'm not giving him any offerings. I'm not like, I'm just going around and just filming signs.
yes, but that's inviting them in some sense.
Right. But,
If you were not,
what
if
do
you
we
were not
do?
touched, well, then you go and get a regular 9 to 5 job, or some other music might be an alternative,
Well,
where you're doing something else rather than pursuing the phenomena, because you seem to be very, and there's reasons
I
to
actually
pursue it.
I don't actually spend a lot of time in it.
Okay, but
I
you
don't.
are talking, but you've got a web presence. You are talking with a number of people. You're searching out on this phenomena. If you stop pursuing it and thinking about it, perhaps that would lessen the incidence of these rather negative phenomena.
Well, I haven't had
Where
like
you,
a negative phenomena since 2017 as far as these things, like any really weird or bad
oh,
things.
okay,
Yeah, I
but
haven't.
you seem, okay, but
But I
you
still am
seem
trying
a
to deal
little,
with it. Still trying to deal with it.
okay. Well, you're still trying to deal with it, but you are consciously involved in pursuing an understanding. Maybe this is not the time to do that. That maybe you need to get away from it for a while and then come back and think about it. But for right now, given what you're telling me, and this is rather disruptive in your life even now, that you need to step back. I'm thinking out loud. I'm not saying you should do it. but I just wonder if that might kind of lessen the disruption.
Well, I agree with you. That that's probably the best course in dealing with all this stuff is to, you know, think about other stuff.
Yeah.
Focus on other stuff. I think that the power of intent in our mind, you know,
Yes.
I think that
It attracts it. Yeah.
but that's the trickster, and you say it attracts it. But what's the
Yeah.
it?
These. Well, okay. That's it attracts these kinds of phenomena that you're encountering.
The spirits
Yeah. Well, whatever you want to call it.
or
You've
these
got Bigfoot
entities
showing up.
or
And you've got physical reactions in your body, and your nerve, and you're spending a lot of time thinking about this and podcasts and doing research. Perhaps you need to, I'm thinking to do something else, whether it's music, uh, writing, something different away from this, auto mechanics, carpentry, I don't know what else, go fishing, doing something that's very different than what you've been pursuing.
right.
And
Well,
so
it
you
would
can
have to
kind
be something that would captivate my mind.
of, okay,
So
uh,
fishing probably would be the worst thing to
okay. Well, you could also try learn a little bit about mathematics, work out some puzzles, uh, do some computer programming or something. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know what would
Now,
be
did you
appropriate for you.
now in your journey in dealing with this stuff, did you have any kind of like weird negative side effect in which you had to manage it? Or was it something that
Well,
just never was really too personal for you?
it wasn't too. But then I would be more focused on technology, learning computer programs, learning to write code. Uh,
I remember you
so I
talking about that.
encountered, yeah. So I think that keeps you sort of grounded in the ordinary world. And then, okay, based in the ordinary world, most of the, I would, I, I have investigated, I don't know, between 20 or 35, somewhere about 30 to 50 poltergeist haunting cases.
Okay.
And of there, let's see, in two of the cases, people later went to prison. Three of the cases, people later went to prison. Two of them for murder.
Really?
Another case involved incest, and there were some
Well, I
other.
hope
I
I
have
don't
to. I
sound
have,
crazy to you.
no, you
That
don't
kind
sound
of
crazy,
okay.
but there
Those
there
thoughts are
are
not in my head.
dangers.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, there are dangers,
So
and
this
so I kind of
force,
back.
this trickster force is it seems to be able then to manipulate our thoughts and our mind.
Well, if we allow them, we do have some kind of control. We don't have to immerse ourselves in and think about these things all the time. So it may be that your obsession is kind of drawing them to you.
Yeah. Well,
I'm just
I really don't think much about them. Let's go back to like which
okay.
I think
Hold on,
about
hold on. You've got a podcast. You're searching this out. You are entering this field inherently. This is obviously a big part of your life.
right, but
What else?
I'm more
What other things are you involved with that takes this kind of energy and intention and time?
um for the past couple of months, this has pretty much been it. You're absolutely right.
Okay,
So
well, yeah, and so sometimes I know I just have to step back from it and I go read something else.
right.
There's times when you just gotta walk away, and it also is helpful to observe other groups and have some interaction with them. But it sounds to me like you are very heavily involved. If you're going out searching spending quite a bit of time on these phenomena, uh, it may be telling you that this is not altogether healthy for you.
I wonder about that. But then again, it's like another thing too is like it's the learning process, like and seeing the cult of Bigfoot and it's like there's happening that I'm seeing is that people are it's almost like they're turning Bigfoot into like a demigod.
Yes,
I'm not
that
kidding.
there's
I mean, they really
no, no, no. Yeah, uh, but that may not be healthy.
I think it's a terrible
You
thing.
can do, yeah, it can be interesting, and people need to do that, but do it in very small doses and keep in touch with other people who are doing their research. What are the side effects and of involvement in these topics?
What I see like is like people are like saying stuff like it's like this it's transformed their life. They've become it's like they have like communication with they swear that they're actually talking with Bigfoot.
Yes, yes, of course.
Everything is Bigfoot. Every sound is Bigfoot. Every
Yeah, yeah.
time
Okay.
you know
And what are their personal lives like? What happens to your personal life when you get involved with this? It usually turns bad. It's very
yes.
yeah, that's quite common.
There's a
I've
couple of
got
people I
some,
know. I'm quite concerned about them that they
yeah,
you know
yeah.
when they finally
So that,
realize that Bigfoot's not going to save them.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got to be careful. That's why I take a more academic approach, an analytic approach. I do sometimes do field work, but not much.
Yeah, I understand.
So, so I think you need to, and I'm thinking out loud, but if you want to, there is a danger getting immersed in this.
Right. I definitely agree with you. Maybe this is the reason why
So,
I reached out to you because we had a little couple series and really
yeah,
it's down and
no,
I was thinking
no,
that
but
be a little more intellectual about things and not so
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
but you have to, if you're going to be intellectual, you're going to have to read more abstract stuff.
sure.
And if, and I do think there's something about mathematics that's very important here, but that's for a completely different discussion.
If you're
But
willing to do it, I'd love to talk to you about it and have other people here
yeah,
about your perspective because I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to turn you into a
yeah,
saint
John,
or
yeah,
you have it
no, no,
all.
Yeah, John Keel and I would talk for a fair number of times over the phone, and I would attend his meetings. And
Really?
he also, oh yeah, and he said
You're like the
he
fourth
was,
person I've talked to this month who knew him. All right.
uh, he he told me, yes, he was very concerned about his own mental health a number of times.
So how did he
So,
manage it? What would he
well,
do?
we did, well, I think he kind of withdrew from it.
Yeah, I mean,
He would go off and do other things.
I don't want to be part of the Bigfoot community. I don't want to be part of any community. I just want to have some resolution with this and move on, to be honest with you. That's
Okay,
what I'm looking
well,
for.
yeah. Uh, well, let's see. It's getting very close to 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, did we? I hope you didn't mind the conversation. I hope we
Oh
didn't.
no, 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 no. It's very, very helpful for me to think about this. So no, I'm very much appreciate you
Like,
contacting me.
my intentions are after Saturday, after I interview this one gentleman,
Hmm.
I plan on not talking too much about Bigfoot for a while. So,
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
but I
And
still
read
want to talk
something
to
else.
you about this because it's more
Okay.
than Bigfoot and it's more than ghosts and it's
Yeah.
more than
Yes. Yes.
guys.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and because you seem to be level-headed about this kind of stuff, and I just
Well, yeah. I sometimes am. I'm not always. And but
so maybe
uh,
we really get
yeah.
into this stuff and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know when you When would you be free to do this again?
Well, let's put it off. Contact me in another month or two.
In a couple months.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah. Uh, yeah, I think you need to get away from it for a while.
Okay.
So yeah, it's obviously
Well, it seems to
disturbing.
me that you recognize that this is like a dead end.
Yeah, from what you're doing, yeah, it does not look like a good road you're on right now. I think you understand a lot of stuff, but and I have these problems too at times. Okay, I got to detach myself from this.
Yeah. I don't spend,
So no,
it's been
no,
like
it
3 months, but it's about time to let it go. So, but
yeah, yeah.
we don't. So it's up to you. I do appreciate you spending 2 hours with me, and
Well, no, it's been very good for me. It makes me think a little bit differently. So no, I
well,
feel this has been good.
I hope it's not something too negative about me.
No, 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 no. Everyone who's in this field goes through some, not as extreme as you necessarily, but yeah, there are questions raised.
Or
Uh,
here's another
should,
thing too. Or maybe I'm being really honest about it, and most people aren't. That's another thing
yeah.
I'm noticing too. Most people hide what's
Hmm.
really going on and what they're going
But
through.
you've been very active pursuing these things and out in the field, and there's the valuable information to be learned from this. But there's a price to be paid.
That's true. Well, I do appreciate you spending a couple hours with me.
Well, no,
It was
I
great.
appreciate you contacting me. Yeah.
You're a fascinating individual. Now, do you do any more like too much? I mean, like interviews or is there anything kind of thing that you're going to be doing as some public wise?
Uh, I might do some lectures. That'd be about as much. I'm not hoping. I'm working on a book that goes beyond what I have in my book on the trickster. There's a lot more that can be discussed.
So you are working on your second book. When did you start doing that?
Oh yes.
Because I remember
Oh,
like,
I've been working. No, I've been working on that for years.
okay,
No, it's I do a lot of reading
because the first
and
book took like 8 years to do, didn't it?
yeah, it took about 8 years from the beginning, and this one is going to be a lot longer. There's so much more to draw from. There's a lot of work in anthropology, in philosophy, in sociology, in literary theory that has not been brought to bear effectively on these topics.
Huh. Sounds
So yeah,
very interesting.
it's a whole lot of reading that I've been doing, and it's usually very difficult reading.
Imagine.
So yeah. So anyway, but
Well,
it's very good to be in.
George P.
It's been
Hansen, thank you for spending an evening with me.
well. Thank you for contacting me because I need to have contacts like this and getting people out in the world grappling with these phenomena. It's very easy to kind of poo-poo that. No, I think I have to be in contact with people like you. That's
Well, good.
part of what I have to do to understand this and to hear your stories.
And I want to hear
So
your
I do
story too.
appreciate.
And I want to hear more about this
Okay.
book, what it has to say, So,
Okay. Well, it gets very abstract, but it's getting very close. I've got to get upstairs and take care of some stuff. But
take care.
let's keep in touch.
Let's
Okay.
do that, George. Thank you.
You bet.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye. So if he hangs up. Okay, so that was George Hansen. He probably thinks I'm a little bit nuts, but I don't know, what do you do in my situation at this point? You know what I mean? Now, and also, when it comes to my field research, I don't really spend as much time as people realize. I usually go out field for an hour max. I already know a place I'm going to go, take my images, take my photo, and then my photographs, and then break them down. And Yeah, I think the more you get into this, the more you realize there's something seriously wrong with this place. Not just something seriously wrong with me. There's something seriously wrong with this world. And I think a lot of people don't want to talk about that part because it's kind of scary. To think that you might be in some kind of soul trap matrix. You might be in some kind of matrix that's where everything's a giant deception. That bothers a lot of people. It bothers me. And I hope he talks to me again. I'm an open book. A lot of people have a hard time hearing what I have to say. And as far as like, yeah, as far as Bigfoot goes, I'm going to be Henry, Franzoni. I'm going to have the interview with him. And as far as Bigfoot goes, I'm not really all that interested in the paranormal or UFOs. Actually, I'm not even that much interested in Bigfoot. I'm more interested in figuring out what the hell happened, why it happened, and then how that ties into everything else. Because I truly believe that the more it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it doesn't matter what topic, unless, like he says, if you like mathematics or something like the hard sciences, learn how to work on a car or a new skill to distract yourself. Um, but I am at the stage in my life because of my MS and everything else. I really want to know what the purpose of this place is. Why are we here? And that's all I can think about. And I think a lot of people are where I'm at now. That's what happens to us. So, but um, but I understand where he's come from too. So, and he's probably freaked out that I talk the way I talk. But he should be used to that. I mean, I heard him listening to like Jeff and the guys over there, Paratopia, and their own personal experiences. So, and we probably need to use the restroom as well. But we didn't even get cover the questions. But there's a lot of questions like what and who are these tricksters? Why and how are they tricking us? How are they marginalizing someone like you and me? You being George, because I think it happened to him too. How are they forcing uncertainty and ambiguity on those who recognize the trap we're in? Because it is a trap. I think it is a trap. I think marginalized people end up having these experiences and become more marginalized. And since there's no one to really talk to about these things, we hold it inside us, right? There's no way, there's no escape valve. There's no way to just have this discussion with someone. And I imagine he probably feels like I'm treating him like a therapist. And I mean, really, he once was a parapsychologist. But I think it's because, he's talking about stuff like structure, anti-structure, liminal spaces, language, the chaos. There's so many things. I mean, the dysfunction. I mean, I see there's dysfunction. There's no place to go, and I don't know anybody who knows how to hide from this shit. You know what I mean? You can go run and hide and do something. But this shit's still going to show up in your life. It's still going to be in the back of your head. It's still going to be around you. And there's like, you're just like, how do I deal with this stuff? For me, it's just I'm going to go the best I can to try to understand the world that I'm in. And I understand if a lot of people think I'm batshit crazy because a lot of times I wonder if I am myself. Why is it happening to me? But then again, I'm looking at people who like spend, 10, 20, 40 hours a week playing video games. I think that's batshit crazy. Or watching television or just watching videos. I think that's batshit crazy. So, and one of the things I am going to get in doing is, but it's all revolved around this stuff. It's like I need to deal with this. I mean, if people see the images, I'm not just making this shit up. It's not pareidolia. I mean, these are entities all around us, and they're not just human beings. And there's spirit realms all around us. And I think that's wrong. Personally, I think that why do they have um, the ability, the right to pay attention to us, observe us, and use us as like their entertainment? Um, and we have like no defense, except I think to be honest about what's going on. So, and I think that you know, there's a lot of issues. It's not just me, humanity itself, right? If you're, in a job, you're working with somebody, it's like the dynamics, the bullshit. I don't want to deal with the bullshit. You know, I don't. You don't need it. All the petty arguments and all the so and maybe it's just gonna just be my choice. I'm gonna be a hermit. I like being a hermit. And yeah, as far as having like supernatural weird things in my life, none of that's happened in a long time because I've learned to manage things a little bit and focus on many other things. So, like being a father, cooking for my son. And certainly the past couple of months, I've been focusing on Bigfoot because I think it's to have some resolution for once, to really know what to really know what I know and to be like, this is it. And I'm pretty confident that Bigfoot is, for the most part, 99% of what people call Bigfoot, they're dealing with spirits and poltergeists and manifestations that look just like Bigfoot, that fit the description. At least they appear to be. And I just think that we live in a place. This was as above, so below, right? This hierarchical structure that we live under that I know is necessary. The George will say it's necessary. We need to have these things in order for civilization to maintain. But also, when you really look what's going on, deeper what's going on, it's like this loosh factory that we're really there just to produce these emotions, these feelings, and these parasitic things feed upon it. It sounds crazy, right? But Bob Moreau talked about it, and a lot of other people talk about it. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out why. Why is life the way it is, And why did my life end up the way it is? Is it because I have to focus on Bigfoot? I don't think so. I think some people say that you chose this, right? That you agreed to this, before you came to this place. I didn't choose this. I think people should know the truth about what's going on. And what's going on is that we do live in a prison. It's a spiritual prison, a physical prison, a mental prison. And we got to figure out a way to escape Alcatraz, if you will. So that was George. I said, George probably like, what's going on? Where am I going with this? I'm not used to it. Maybe there really isn't, maybe my expectations and others is the hope that people really understanding what I've gone through, am going through. Um, Maybe that's just a fantasy in its own right. Maybe it's too much to expect another human being to even understand. Anyways, the trickster and the paranormal. Good old George.